Hello and welcome to Benocam. We are back fixing military vehicles again today, and in particular we are going to be taking the engine out on the Abbot self-propelled gun. The engine itself on this Abbot should be okay, but we've been having problems with the starter motor, and with these vehicles they don't really give you much room at all to work on them, so the engine pack in this vehicle occupies this entire front section here, and even with these covers removed you just can't get your hands down around the sides to fix anything. So what we have to do is we have to remove all these covers, all these come off, and then the whole engine pack actually lifts out in one big unit. The engine, gearbox, the whole thing lifts out in a big pack, and what you can do is actually stick it in front of the vehicle, leave it all connected up, and then you can run the pack out of the vehicle to check for leaks and things like that, which is quite a useful feature. Unfortunately it won't lift out with the turret the way it is, so I can't actually do it in the shed. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pull the vehicle out. It's not running at the moment. I'll have to tow it out the shed, turn the turret to the side, and then we can use the crane stalwart to lift the engine pack out. That is the vehicle out of the shed. Hopefully we have enough room there to swing the turret, and that's what we're going to be doing now. We're going to be getting inside and moving that turret right the way around so that it doesn't foul on these covers when we go to lift them off. Haven't been in here for a while. Oh. And the traverse lever, is this one up here? Oh. Right. This is the one we need to wind. These are the smallest of the covers, and they're not too bad, but seeing as we got the machine, we may as well use it, as these are proper hand jammers. And they're actually surprisingly heavy as well. They're a lot heavier than they look. With the covers off, you can see now what I'm saying about how little room they've allowed around the outsides of it to fix it. So they're the main cooling fans at the back. This is your engine in here, radiator. This is the airbox, and the starter motor is actually right down underneath this airbox. So even if you could remove all of this, it'd still be very, very difficult to be able to get in there to fix it. All we need to do now is this strut has to come out. This is what carries those top plates. That just needs to be unbolted, and then we have to disconnect the main drive. So this is where the main drive comes out of the engine into the steering box. Those ringer bolts need to be disconnected. These are the services to the engine, which I said about can all be left connected up. You can actually remove the entire engine pack with all of them still connected and swing it and turn it and put it right in front of the machine, which we will be hopefully doing, and then running the engine. The worst job that we still have to do, which is left to do, is we have to crawl underneath, because the whole power pack is actually held in by 4 bolts which are accessed from underneath, so you have to crawl right in underneath. It's the least favourite job. It's not very nice, but it does have to be done before the power pack will be lifted out. Right, we are going in underneath to get these bottom engine bolts, and I do not know what they were thinking when they designed this like this. I guess they weren't the ones having to do it, but the ones we were after are actually underneath these little covers. So we have to remove these covers. These are the front two. You can see here there's not a lot of ground clearance at all. Probably wouldn't be so bad on a nice smooth floor, which we're not, but we'll have to make do with what we got. And then the back two are right the way back there as well. So we'll get those two in a minute. That is the little cover there removed, and you can now see the bolt here which is holding the engine in. That's now got to come out. Right, that is one of the engine power pack bolts. Just 3 more to go. Got the A-team on the job here now. Look, how's it going, Vinzo?
Yes, alright. Didn't realise how much we'd done these nuts up last time you put them in.
So Vinzo's doing the prop shaft bolts, which is the final bit of the puzzle, and then it all should come apart. Right, that's the crane all in. Yeah, it's pretty tight, but it does move. We forgot the exhaust clamp. Totally forgot about that, but it's no problem. Ready to go. Should be alright, shouldn't it? So we're all hooked up, and it's time to see whether or not the stalwart will lift this engine pack out. It should do, but this is quite an old vehicle now, and everything is old and untested in a way, so we shall just gently give it a lift and see what happens. Right, that is the engine now all lifted out. And the really good news is the starter motor. We were really worried that the starter motor was either completely toast or even there was another really big problem, because when you engage the starter motor it's making a nasty grinding noise, and that's because the entire starter has actually come loose. This bit here should be right up there, so this whole starter has actually come loose. You can see the gap there. So that's brilliant news. It might even be the case that this starter is actually alright and just needs loosening off and putting back in, but yeah, that's really good news. And then there's also a couple oil leaks which got worse and worse the more we used it. So we're going to do them while it's out. Give it a good clean up, degrease. You can see the state of the engine bay in here now. Not that bad actually. Considering we had oil leaks, we knew we had oil leaks. You can see just how tight the area is for the engine. That engine only just fits in here. It's like purpose made to fit this exact hole. Even the angles of these allows absolutely no room to get your hands down the side of anything to fix anything within the vehicle. So if you're not too familiar with these, this is the Rolls-Royce K60, which is quite an unusual engine. So this is what they call a vertically opposed engine, which means that it has 6 cylinders but it has 12 pistons. So it has 2 rows of pistons with 2 cranks. So there's a crank in the bottom and a crank in the top, and they share the same cylinders, and so half of them come up from the top and half of them come down from the bottom. And it's supercharged. You can see there's a big supercharger in here, and it's also 2-stroke and multi-fuel, so you can actually run this on petrol or diesel. Junkers, the plane manufacturer, the German plane manufacturer, they come up with the idea, and the idea was to get as maximum power out of a small space. So when you look at the vehicle itself, the engine bay on this wasn't very big. They didn't have a lot of room to play with, so the idea was to get the maximum amount of horsepower they could get out of quite a small size, and they achieved it quite well with this. These are quite good engines. They're still good to get parts for, and they usually run very well, and they're usually quite reliable. So now that this one's out, we've got the leaks to fix. We've done the starter, that's all good. You can see here that I've disconnected the drive. So this is the gearbox here, the engine's in this piece in here. This is the gearbox, and this is the drive. It's very important to disconnect this drive here, because when you run them, you don't want this rattling round. You can see what a strange size radiator, strange shape it is. They put this little cutout for the drive to come through. You don't want that shaft rattling around and damaging that. And yeah, that's the radiator, that's the header tank. We got the fuel filter is here. This is the fan control unit, so this controls the fans. The cooling on this is done with hydraulic fans. So you've got those 2 big fans at the end, and they actually suck air in through the front of the vehicle, through the radiator and up through. So they actually blow air up through, and the idea is that you draw air through the whole system, which cools everything. This is the hydraulic tank, which tops up the hydraulic oil for the fans. You've got 2 really big generators in here to make the 24 volts. Here's one. The second one is actually buried in there. This is the transfer case, so the end of the engine is actually here, and then the drive is transferred from here up to the gearbox through a series of cogs into there, a series of gears. And yeah, there's not really much else to it. It's a fairly straightforward engine because it's vertically opposed the way it is. There's no valve head, there's no valves to worry about, there's no cylinder head. It's quite simple in a sense. It's all geared together. This is the main exhaust here. So both the inlets and the exhaust are right in the centre of the engine. You can just see the exhaust manifold here, and that's where the air is rammed in. So your inlet and your exhaust are right in the centre. Air goes in there, exhaust out here, and you can see here that's the little data plate. So it's a K60 number 4. Yeah. And this is where all the vehicle connections take place. So this is your power is here, all your controls which go to your dash, and this is your fuel lines. It's one of these that's actually leaking. We're gonna have to replace this one. And I've also got 2 quite bad leaks on the fan pipes here and here. So those 2, you can see I've tried taping them up, that didn't work at all. They're gonna have to come off, and we're gonna have to stop that because we are leaking quite a bit of oil and a little bit of fuel, which, although it's not a huge amount, it's just not very nice to go places and drip little bits of oil everywhere, which is quite common with these age machines. It's quite usual for them to mark where they've been. You can see here I've got a few little spill mats just to try and contain the oily mess which is coming out of them. This piece right here, this is actually the heat exchanger, and it works very similar to a boat heat exchanger in that you've got different compartments with different oils. So we've got the engine oil, the fan oil and the transmission oil all coming into different sections, and then water is actually pumped through the whole thing, through loads of little tubes in the centre. It's an absolute nightmare to take off and work on. It's very poorly designed, I think. It's not the best. But they didn't have a lot of room to play with, so they've had to fit it in. Whoever designed this clearly didn't like the people who were going to work on them and who had to fix them, because that is an absolute nightmare to take off, and you've got to realign all these different pipes. Some of them are actually hard piped, so there's not a lot of flexibility. Absolute nightmare to work on and take off. And it's the same with the radiator as well. I've actually had this radiator off, and it's really, really difficult to be able to fit in. There's just no room at all to get anything to align. It's very, very difficult, very tricky job. But yeah, all of these things aren't particularly nice to work on. Everything's very well built, but there's just not a lot of room around everything, and it's just very tricky. You end up banging your hands a lot and having to find very strange size spanners to be able to fit, things like that. But it is Rolls-Royce quality, so everything is actually very well built, and even though this engine was left for a long time out in the rain. There was a lot of corrosion on different things. Everything undid. There was a few bolts we had to actually hammer and chisel off, but everything undid and was able to get mole grips on things and undo things and replace things, which was great. Right, time to see if it's going to run. So, put the isolator on, and then this is our ignition, and then here is the actual firing switch. We'll just leave her pump the fuel up a little bit. You can hear it there pumping. There's our little displays all looking good, and we'll give her a fire. Whoa. Sounding good. Right, that is everything all back together, and it's time to see if it still works. We're all back in the shed, and yeah, no, that's running really nice. Really pleased with that. Engine is back in, and the vehicle is once again operational. So we'll have to have a think now where we can take it, get it road legal again, get it back on the road. And yeah, any suggestions you've got where we could take it are more than welcome. And yeah, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you again soon for more videos.